On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, Google searches for Bitcoin are up over 400% in Venezuela over the last week alone. Dash is the privacy-focused digital currency that offers transactions with instant confirmations. Its unique, decentralized decision-making and self-funding system make it an ideal choice as a stable and secure digital cash. Click the link in the video description to learn more. Hi there guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains. I am your host, Chris Coney. Now today is Wednesday the 28th of December 2016, and we're going to go into the market roundup and then into the news. So cryptocurrency prices, as always, are provided by coinmarketcap.com, and we look at the biggest winner and the biggest loser over the last 24 hours. Let's begin with the biggest loser. In 13th position in total market cap, we have Economy, which has lost 14.4% of its value in the last 24 hours. Now that is after a couple of great days last week, where Economy was, I think, 2 days on the trot, the biggest winner of the day. That puts an Economy token down at 27 cents, and the whole blockchain is worth about $23.5 million. Now, interestingly, the biggest winner of the day, with a 21.5% gain, is Monero. And Monero has actually moved up to the 5th most capitalized coin. And Monero, it's now worth $12.92, and the whole blockchain is capitalized at $176.2 million, which is very interesting. That's a big jump for a blockchain of that size. So a 20% gain, so it was about $10, and now it's $12 to $13. So that is a decent jump. The other big thing to notice about CoinMarketCap today, and this is happening more and more often now, is the amount of trading volume in the top, let's call it the top 5. They're all starting to be multi-million dollar days. Like Bitcoin's done $205 million of trading volume. Monero did 12 million, 10 million for Ethereum, 10 million for Litecoin, and on we go, right? The other thing that's interesting is to look at the main numbers at the very top of CoinMarketCap. So the total market cap of the Cryptoverse, or all coins, is 17.5 billion. And total trading volume is 262 million. And Bitcoin's dominance has been rising recently because it's such a huge market, and also it's been rising quite a bit. It means that Bitcoin now accounts for 88.2% of all the market cap in the cryptosphere, Cryptoverse. And now let's go have a look at the Bitcoin price chart and see what's going on over there. So here we are once again on the Bitcoin price chart, courtesy of Bitcoin Wisdom. And we've had another 2 big jumps in the last 2 days. You would have thought after those 3 big jumps from the 21st, the 22nd and the 23rd that we would stabilize for a bit. Well, we took a short break for a couple of days, and now we're off again, having gained 3.7% yesterday and already another 3% gain today. And if you remember, before this all happened, I said this was going to be clear air after we got above $800, and I've been doing my best to try and draw some horizontal resistance lines based on historical data, but it's quite hard because there isn't a lot of it. This is we're in uncharted territory here. If I switch my chart over to a weekly chart, the only thing I can see, the all-time high back here from 2013 was $1,163. That was the high of that day, but the actual closing price on that day was more like 955. So I've drawn a line there because, I'm kind of clutching at straws a bit here for technical data, and because we really are in uncharted territory. But we're kind of around that right about now. In fact, we're above that. I said historically in 2013 the day closed at 955 dead, but even now on Bitstamp, Bitcoin's trading at $958.36. So it's already trading above that. So I honestly don't know what to say. It's we could. I was talking to someone about this yesterday. We could see $1,000 Bitcoin before the end of the year, even though we've only got 3 days left. Anything's possible. In terms of the news then, I've turned to bitcoin.com. There was quite a few good articles today across the world, but I picked this one out, which is Google searches for Bitcoin up over 400% in Venezuela over the past week. So we've been following the Venezuela situation, the hyperinflation they've got going on there, the riots, the demonetization, absolute chaos. It's like I would not like to be there. It'd be like a living nightmare, to be honest. And I do like to raise awareness of these issues because maybe somehow it'll help the Venezuelans, and maybe it'll help raise awareness to someone who can help them. So, raising awareness to these kind of things can't really hurt. Anyway, the article begins by saying the economy of Venezuela has been shred apart by a financial crisis resulting from the local government's decision to demonetize the nation's largest denomination banknote. However, after a plane carrying the newly printed banknotes failed to arrive, Venezuelan authorities officially declared the previously scrapped 100 BS banknotes as legal tender once again. Now, I'll give them that. I'll have to give them that. I think that was the right thing to do. At least they didn't just go, well, not our problem, just deal with it, right? At least they took some positive action and almost, I guess you could say, admitted they're slightly in the wrong by reversing their decision and then letting the old banknotes be used again. So it says here that the economy has been shred apart by the demonetization. That's not the whole story. The demonetization is making an existing problem worse. So no event is ever isolated, and especially no economic event. And this is because the world economy is woven together in one great big organic network of cause and effect. And Venezuela's economy is dominated by the petroleum sector. Now, early in 2016, when the price of oil fell to just $25 a barrel, that would have really, really hurt Venezuela, since 80% of their exports come from the oil industry. I mean, imagine if you were a company and you only had one product to sell, and the price you were able to sell that for plummeted. That would cause you a huge problem, wouldn't it? And then with regards to these new banknotes not arriving on time, it kind of begs the question, why didn't they wait for the new banknotes before banning the old ones? That's kind of a rhetorical question. Anyway, moving on. The bit I've highlighted in orange here says, consequently, the lack of cash led to the starvation of the general population. Over the Christmas holidays, people died whilst waiting to acquire food, medicine, and other necessities. So I'll say to the few people who have been commenting on my videos in support of demonetization, are you still in support of this when it's actually leading to people dying? I mean, who's going to be held responsible for these deaths? Again, another rhetorical question. Let's move on. It says such incidents arise when a central entity or authority have monopoly over its monetary system and the country's money flow. Now, I make this point more fully in the Digital Money Revolution course. I use the Federal Reserve as the natural example. And I say that with the best will in the world, no central bank is ever going to succeed. And that's because there's a flaw in the way that the system is actually set up. What I mean by that is to expect a small group of people at the central bank to be able to account for the trillions of variables in an economic system is unfair. It's far too complex. The other thing is they don't have access to complete and perfect information. And even if they did, it would just be way, way too much information for one small group of people to comprehend. And this is why we see a trend away from these vertically integrated and centralized organizations and a move towards networked organizations, which is what all cryptocurrencies essentially are. They are essentially decentralized autonomous organizations. Now, in a networked organization, instead of a small group of people making these centralized decisions, you harness the wisdom of the crowd to manage these tiny parts of the organization locally. And that way, those people have direct access to good information, and they're also dealing with an amount of information that's manageable. And I'll also say that governments are no exception to this trend. They are also going to have to evolve into networked organizations or die. It is literally evolve or die. So following on from that, it says people are becoming increasingly aware of the consequences of government-funded and supported banking and financial systems. Until recently, the majority has had to deal with the financial monopoly of governments due to the non-existence of decentralized currencies. I would say that's exactly right. Up until now, there has been no competition between monetary systems. We were all trapped inside the one and only system which we could not escape from, even if we tried, or even if we wanted to. And that meant that people in control, or the people in control of that system, could basically treat us however they wanted to and get away with it. There were no consequences, number one, and number two, there was nowhere for us to run. Well, now we have an alternative. One by one, people are voluntarily opting into the Bitcoin economy. And the key point here is that everyone who joins the crypto economy does so voluntarily. That is not something you can say about the old fiat money system, because that system was forced on us from birth. Now, I like this next bit particularly, the bit in blue. It says, however, Bitcoin is gradually altering the mindset of the global population across the world by providing people with the ability to gain control of their money and obtain financial freedom. Exactly. It is only a mindset. Think about it. The mental models that we use inside our heads, they ultimately determine the way the world is built, because we kind of have to conceptualize something mentally before we can build it in reality. And this is literally how thoughts create reality. You don't have to believe in magic to see how this works. It's simply a case of how your actions are a product of the way you see the world. And the way you build a skyscraper, the way you build anything, or you put anything together in the physical world, it reflects the way you think about it. Now, if you want kind of a silly personal example of this, I'll give you one. So a couple of weeks ago, I went down to a PC World store and I took a demo of the HTC Vive, the virtual reality headset thing. And I was in this virtual world and there was a guy kind of guiding me through it. And there was this sort of robot dog in the virtual world. And I think I had some sort of gun or other. And he said, shoot the dog. And he was kind of, just having a bit of fun with it, but I couldn't do it. Right? Now you might think that's daft. It's like, well, it's only a virtual dog. It's not real. That's not the point. The principle was I couldn't bring myself to cause that dog some harm, even though it wasn't a real dog. That is not the point. And when I reflected on why I couldn't shoot the dog in the virtual world, it kind of made me think about drone pilots. Unmanned drones that are controlled, for thousands of miles away by somebody. How are they able to kill people with a drone? I would argue it's easier to do that than if you physically had to shoot them face to face. And it's based on a mental model. If it looks like a computer game, right, when you're flying the drone, it kind of becomes easy to detach yourself from the harm that you are doing. And that mental model, while my example of the virtual dog and the example of a drone strike are worlds apart, they are very similar in terms of how me and the drone pilot think about the situation and how we're able to carry out an action or not based on how we interpret what we see in our own minds. So for me, the principle was, if I'm not willing to shoot a dog in real life, why should I suddenly allow myself to shoot a virtual dog? Anyway, some of you will understand what I'm talking about here. Some of you won't. Don't worry about it. Anyway, let's move on to the purple bit. It says, in a recent article called R.I.P. Bitcoin, It's Time to Move On, published by the Washington Post, it stated that Bitcoin was born with serious flaws. And this is this fellow from Stanford, Harvard, and Berkeley, a professor, Vivek Wadhwa. He was the one that said Bitcoin was born with serious flaws. And to that I say, well, as we all were. We all were born with serious flaws. We couldn't even walk or talk. We couldn't feed ourselves. Even now, we have a number of personal problems, each of which create an incentive for us to improve ourselves. I believe that's the purpose of them. And in that regard, Bitcoin is no different. Another quick personal story. One of my personal favorite movies is Tron Legacy. I don't know if you've seen it, but I do recommend it. Long story short, the villain in that movie becomes evil specifically because he's obsessed with achieving perfection, when in reality, perfection is something to work towards in full knowledge that it's ultimately unobtainable. And that's a good thing, because if we ever achieved perfection, then progress and evolution would stop. So the article finishes off by saying, in fact, over the past week, Google searches for the keyword Bitcoin in Venezuela rose by over 400%. Some Venezuelans have begun to allocate their capital, which is rapidly losing value, into Bitcoin mining, with the hopes of obtaining a legitimate currency in Bitcoin to purchase goods and items internationally on platforms like Amazon through things like Purse.io. And like I've said in previous episodes, the Google Trends tool is publicly available for anyone to do this kind of research. In fact, I was playing with it here. I've just switched over to my tab here. This chart I've got open shows the level of interest in the word Bitcoin as a search term over the past 5 years in Venezuela. And it really starts to grow at the start of 2015 and then kind of increases gradually from there. So the final paragraph of the article here says, the rising demand and interest in Bitcoin in Venezuela also makes the possibility of the replacement of a national currency with a digital store of value such as Bitcoin ever more likely, considering that the national currency has already lost most of its value among Venezuelans. Again, in the minds of the people, if they no longer trust it, it's doomed, right? It says people are trying anything within their capacity to obtain US dollars, gold, and Bitcoin to ensure they can support their daily living. So what happens then when the population of a country like Venezuela switches to using a currency like Bitcoin? What if the vast majority of the population refuse to use the bolivar and just use Bitcoin? What then? Now, while Bitcoin is only being used by a few people, the government can harass, arrest, or imprison them one by one. But what happens when it's 90% of the population? You could say that's strength in numbers. And I would hope that if we got to that point, one of my dreams would be realized. And that is for the government to surrender and then start accepting tax payments in Bitcoin directly. So thanks for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Please leave me a comment below with some feedback and get subscribed. And please support the Cryptoverse and boost cryptocurrency adoption by going to cryptoversity.com/podcast and becoming a patron. From as little as $10 a month, you can secure Cryptoversity's future, get unlimited access to all Cryptoversity courses, and access a private patrons-only chat group where you get direct access to me. That's all for today, guys. I will be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. Until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.